Hello everyone. Today I will try to explain the plot of the movie Interstellar, keeping in mind the bootstrap paradox that appears to be there in the movie. Now, before I go into the concept of the bootstrap paradox, uh, you must realize that we perceive the universe in three dimensions. Um, so when you watch this movie Interstellar with the three-dimensional point of view, you will realize, you will feel that there's a bootstrap paradox in this movie. But what you need to remember is that they were the beings of the fifth dimension. And when you try to understand how things work in five dimensions, and when you realize how the concept of the bulk and parallel world lines was used in this movie by Christopher Nolan, you will realize that there was actually no bootstrap paradox. And I will try to explain throughout this video how those concepts were used in this movie. So most of you must be aware of the bootstrap paradox that is being talked about here. But for those who are not, let me just explain here. So I have listed the events that take place in the movie, and one event leads to another. So here it is. So event one is Murph and Cooper receive NASA's coordinates in the form of a gravitational anomaly. Now that leads to event two, that coordinates lead Cooper to NASA and then through the wormhole. Then Cooper reaches Gargantua's singularity and enters the Tesseract. Now, what you need to keep in mind here is that events 2 and 3 would not have taken place unless event 1 would have taken place prior to them. So that means to reach NASA and to be able to end up in the Tesseract, Cooper had to receive NASA's coordinates beforehand. Now what happens next is that we see that Cooper gives out NASA's coordinates using gravity, which are received by Murph and Cooper of the past in the form of a gravitational anomaly. So if you look closely, event 1 actually took place here inside the Tesseract at the end of the movie. So if the coordinates were given at the end of the movie, how did Cooper reach NASA and end up in the Tesseract in the first place? Now that is the bootstrap paradox. So in a nutshell, NASA's coordinates led Cooper to the Tesseract, but it was shown in the end that he needed to be inside the Tesseract to be able to give out those NASA's coordinates. So if he was giving out NASA's coordinates at the end of the movie from inside the Tesseract, how did Cooper reach the Tesseract in the first place? So that is something I'm going to explain throughout this video. A movie like Interstellar, it leaves you with a lot of questions. But you need to make sure that you're asking yourself the right questions, because when you're trying to find the answers to the right questions, you end up heading in the right direction. So I'll show you a list of questions that you should be asking yourself while you watch this movie. And there are like 10 or 12 questions, and once I start explaining the plot, I'll answer all these questions along the way. So here you go. Question 1, where's the parallel universe? So the movie talks about the fifth dimension and also refers to they as the fifth dimensional future human beings. Now, a fifth dimension goes hand in hand with the theory of a parallel universe, or it can be said that the fifth dimension is actually parallel universe. Now the question is that if Christopher Nolan talks about fifth dimension in this movie and says that they are the beings of the fifth dimension, then why would not the plot incorporate the concept of a parallel universe in the story? I mean, otherwise, the term fifth dimension would not have been thrown around like that throughout the movie, not by Nolan. Now, question two. So, we see that inside the Tesseract, Cooper figures out that they chose Murph to save the world. Now, he could have simply given out the quantum data to Murph in that watch for her to save the people on the earth. But instead, he chose to give out the NASA's coordinates first to Cooper of the past. Now, why did he do that? I mean, why did he not simply give out the quantum data and apparently everything would have worked out? So, moving on to question three, why the name Lazarus Mission? Now, in this movie, for the name Lazarus Mission to make any kind of sense, someone had to die and then come back from the dead to save humanity. Now, Dr. Mann, he tells Cooper that you literally brought me back from the dead, but actually he never died. He was just woken up from a long nap. And even after he was woken up, he didn't make any contribution to the mission or to save the people on the earth. So, why would Christopher Nolan use such a name which implies that someone had to die and come back from the dead? Now, we need to remember that this movie talks about higher dimensions, and maybe someone died in the higher dimension and came back from the dead, and maybe we failed to realize that while we watched the movie. So I'll throw more light on that later in the video. Now, question 4. Shouldn't he know that already? So we see that inside the Tesseract, Tars tells Cooper that you have worked out that you can exert a force across space-time. Now, Cooper, he does some deep thinking and he reacts as if he has discovered something new, that yes, gravity can cross the dimensions, including time. Now, this is very strange because we saw in the beginning of the movie that Cooper had already figured that out when he told Murph that it's not a ghost, it's gravity. So Cooper knew that gravity can cross dimensions, including time. He knew that already. So why, inside the Tesseract, Cooper reacts in a way as if he has heard it for the first time? So now question 5. What is it that Cooper's pretending? So in the end, when Cooper reaches Cooper Station, he's talking to Tars and he tells him that I don't care much for this pretending we're back where we started. So, what is it that Cooper's pretending? I mean, who is he pretending in front of? And why does he need to pretend anything? So, what exactly is this pretense that Cooper is talking about? I will explain later in this video, and then he says that I just want to know where we are and where we are going. So the question is, what is this pretense all about? So now, question number 6. Why does Cooper refer to himself as a third person? Now, before I explain this question, I just want to give you a situation and just want to know how would you react in that situation. So just look at this picture here. Let's assume that this is your friend. His name is Tom, and this person here is you, and your name's Jerry. So you are watching this video of a game that you played in the past, and you at this point want to tell Tom that Tom should have passed the ball to you because you were in a better position to take a shot at the goal. So how exactly would you tell Tom the same thing while you are watching this video from the past? So would you tell him that, hey Tom, you should have passed the ball to Jerry? Now remember, you are Jerry, okay? So would you go like that? Or would you tell him, you know what, you should have passed the ball to him while pointing at yourself on the screen? Or would you just tell him, hey Tom, you should have passed the ball to me? I think this is the option that you would go with because we always refer to ourselves as a first person while watching the pictures or the videos of the past. Now, here's another example. Um, let's say this is you, your name's Jerry. This is your friend, your best friend, his name is Tom. Now, you're showing this picture to your uncle and you tell him, that's Jerry, while pointing at yourself, and standing on his left is his best friend. Is that how you're gonna tell your uncle? Or would you just tell him that, that's me and standing on my left is my best friend? Again, I think this makes more sense because we never refer to ourselves as a third person while watching the videos or images of the past. But in this movie Interstellar, we see that when Cooper is inside the Tesseract and he is looking at himself of the past, he refers to himself as a third person. He tells Murph, tell him, Murph, make him stay. Make him stay, Murph. So he's looking at himself of the past and he's referring to himself as a third person, which we never do while watching the videos or like pictures of the past. So why does he do that? And it's only once later when he sees that Cooper is getting up and is about to leave Murph. Then he says, don't let me leave Murph. But the rest of the times he uses the third person reference for himself. So later in the video, I'll explain why he referred to himself as a third person, and I'll also explain why only once he referred to himself as the first person. Now, question 7. What is the significance of Murphy's Law in Interstellar? So Cooper explains to Murph that why she was named Murphy, and he tells her that what it means is whatever can happen will happen. So how exactly this law reflects in this movie Interstellar? So now question 8. Did you notice Cooper's unexpected reaction to his recreated house? So what happens is that when Cooper reaches Cooper Station, this guy here in the background is a kind of his tour guide at the Cooper Station. So he tells him that if you follow me, we've got a really good situation for you. So what he has done is he has recreated Cooper's farmhouse at Cooper Station, and he wants to present it to Cooper as a welcome back present. So when we see Cooper walking towards that house after so many years he's gonna enter that house, we expect an emotional reaction from Cooper, you know, an emotion of nostalgia. I mean, you would expect, that, he would have had so many memories in that house with his wife, his kids. So you expect this to be a very emotional moment. You would expect him to go to that room where he spoke to Murph for the last time before he left her. you would expect him to maybe go through his son's stuff, maybe like his baseball bat or something. So, what exactly happens? You see here, nothing of that sort happens. He just enters the house and he looks around as if he's looking at this house for the first time. Look at the guy in the background. He is expecting a reaction from Cooper, but he does not get any. The only thing that catches uh, his attention is stars lying over there in the corner of the room. Apart from that, he is not genuinely interested in the house. So, what do you think is the reason behind Cooper's strange reaction when he enters his old house? Now, question 9. What does TARS mean by that? So, inside the Tesseract, TARS tells Cooper that they did not bring us here to change the past. And then Cooper says, say that again, like he's on to something. So, what exactly did TARS mean by that statement? Question 10. What was that handshake all about? So, we see that when Endurance was passing through the wormhole, Anne Hathaway, she shook hands with a Cooper from the other dimension. So, what exactly that handshake was all about? Question 11. How did Murph figure it out? So, we see that a 40-year-old Murph goes back to her room and she's looking at her old stuff and she goes through her old notebook and suddenly she realizes that the ghost was actually her father. So what exactly gave it away? So how did she figure that out? Question 12. Now this um, is the last question. I will answer this question straight away, and with the answer of this question, I will start the explanation of the plot of the movie. And during that explanation, I will answer all the questions that I raised previously. So, question 12 is, did we overlook a gravitational anomaly? So, in this movie, we see that there were a lot of gravitational anomalies that were shown. For every anomaly, we knew what exactly was its purpose and who created that anomaly. But there was one anomaly which was mentioned in the movie just once, and it was never talked about later. So let me show you all the anomalies here. So here is the list of all the important gravitational anomalies that we saw in the movie. First, a placing of the wormhole near Saturn. Second, books falling from the shelf. Then third one was the stay message. And fourth one was the sand pattern, which was used to give out the coordinates of NASA. So here, as you can see, for all these anomalies, we knew who exactly created those anomalies and what exactly was the purpose of each of these anomalies. Now, as I told, there was another gravitational anomaly, which was mentioned in the movie just once, and it was the point where Cooper reaches the secret facility of NASA, and there Romilly tries to explain what exactly they have been experiencing. So he tells Cooper that we started detecting gravitational anomalies almost 50 years ago. Then he tells Cooper that in fact I believe you encountered one yourself. And Cooper responds by saying that my crash, something tripped my fly-by-wire. So the fifth gravitational anomaly that I would like to mention here would be the tripping of the fly-by-wire of Cooper's craft, which led to its crash. Now, this seems to be a very horrible act. I mean, why would anyone want to crash um, somebody's spacecraft? I mean, what good could come out of such an act? So, question is, who created that and what possibly could be the purpose? So now, let me answer this. So, let's say this is the timeline of Cooper. I mean, in the fourth dimension, we would call it a world line for Cooper. So on the left is his past, on the right is his future as it goes along. So I'll refer to him as Cooper A because he was an astronaut before the crash. Now, this is the point in his life where the gravitational anomaly trips the fly-by-wire of his spacecraft and he experiences that crash. And post that, as we see in the movie, he quits NASA and he becomes a farmer. So his life takes a turn and he becomes a farmer. So I'd call him Cooper F. But as Murphy's law states that everything that can happen will happen, so in a parallel universe, he was still an astronaut with NASA. So that is something which was not shown in the movie, but in reality, he was still an astronaut with NASA in a parallel world line, in a parallel universe. So, the fifth gravitational anomaly was created by they, and the purpose was to somehow force Cooper to quit NASA so that a parallel world line for Cooper will be created in which he won't be an astronaut with NASA. In this case, he chose to be a farmer and became Cooper F. Now, how did they use this parallel world line of Cooper to save humanity, and why was it necessary to do it this way? Is something you're gonna find out later in this video. So, this is where the movie starts. I mean, at the point of the crash, um, this is Cooper F's world line. Okay, before the crash, he was Cooper A, and post that crash, he quit NASA and he became a farmer. And had he not received those coordinates to NASA, he would have never reached NASA, and hence his life would have been heading towards extinction because of the blight. But thankfully that didn't happen. So let's see, this is the point where actually the movie starts, where Cooper dreams about that crash. Okay, he has a nightmare about that crash. This is the point where Murph and Cooper receive coordinates to NASA, and that changes everything. So now they are not heading towards extinction anymore. So another world line for Cooper is created because of this event. So now I'd refer to him as Cooper-F to differentiate him from the Cooper F who was heading towards extinction. So at this point, Murph and Cooper reach NASA, and then Cooper is told that he needs to go on a mission. Um, this is the point where Endurance goes through the wormhole, and this is the point where Cooper plunges into Gargantua's event horizon in order to find quantum data. Now let's stop the flow here and let's just think about Cooper A. So what would Cooper A have been doing all this while? I mean, in that parallel universe. So this is Cooper A's world line. He's working with NASA, which is now a secret organization. Um, so in that universe too, NASA would have observed that wormhole, and they would have been tempted to send people on mission to save humanity. So now, because Cooper is still with NASA and he is their best pilot, so Cooper, along with everyone at NASA, would have thought that he is the chosen one, and at some point, Endurance there too would have gone through that wormhole. And as Murphy's law states, that everything that can happen will happen at this point if Cooper has a choice to jump into Gargantua. So even Cooper A would jump uh, into the event horizon of Gargantua. Now here, uh, I will answer one of the questions that I asked earlier, that why the name Lazarus Mission was chosen for this mission. Now that name implies that someone had to die and then had to come back from the dead. So let me tell you here that the person who died was Cooper F. He died as soon as he jumped into Gargantua's event horizon. And the Cooper that we see inside the Tesseract was actually Cooper A, who went inside the Tesseract maybe decades ago. So when Cooper A reached inside the Tesseract after he jumped into the event horizon of Gargantua here at this point in this world line of Cooper A, at that time Cooper F was probably still living on that farm with Murph. So here movie actually switches back in time. It goes back in time, and Cooper is the one who died and came back from the dead from a parallel universe, and he was the one who came back to Cooper Station, and that is the reason why Christopher Nolan gave the name Lazarus Mission to this mission. And here I will also answer the first question that I asked, that why would not the plot incorporate the concept of parallel universe when they are the beings of the fifth dimension? So actually the plot incorporates that concept of parallel universe. So Cooper F died, and from a parallel universe, Cooper A goes inside the Tesseract and he saves the humanity. Now, the question is that where exactly did Christopher Nolan make that switch from Cooper F to Cooper A? Remember when Cooper F jumped into the event horizon of Gargantua? That scene was one of the most intriguing scenes of the movie. As viewers, we wanted to see what kind of imagination are Christopher Nolan and Kip Thorne gonna bring in here to show the inside of a black hole, which was never shown in any movie or science documentary earlier. So Christopher Nolan, like he always does, brought the viewers to the edge of their seats, and then what does he do? He introduces a cut sequence there, and the movie switches back to Earth. Now, why would Christopher Nolan use a cut sequence here and break the flow of one of the most amazing scenes of the movie? So here's how it went. Cooper F decides to jump into the event horizon of Gargantua along with Tars. This is Cooper F, who detaches himself from Endurance and falls into the event horizon of Gargantua, and soon after he detaches himself from Endurance, his spacecraft catches fire. And then we see Cooper F in agonizing pain. Now that's where we see that cut sequence, and the movie switches back to Earth, where we see Cooper's cornfield on fire, his son looking in despair, and Murph holding the replica of the moonlander which was given to her by Cooper. So here, everything that belongs to or is related to Cooper F is shown as kind of broken. So whether it is his spacecraft, which you see here is on fire, or Cooper F himself in pain, his field on fire, his son watching helplessly in despair, Murph is hopeless and is looking at the broken replica of the moonlander which was given to her by Cooper F. So all these things here indicate that Cooper F's world is coming to an end. So this is where Cooper F dies, and this is where we, the viewers, say goodbye to Cooper F. So here, the Cooper that we see in the next scene is actually Cooper A. So he's the one who jumps inside the Tesseract. So here the movie has made a switch from here to here. So it goes back in time to the time where Cooper A jumped into the Tesseract. Now this is Cooper A. He's getting dragged towards the Tesseract. And do you know what are these white dots that you see? These are all the possible world lines, all the possible parallel universes for Cooper. So this is where I answer one of the questions, that what is the significance of Murphy's law. This is Murphy's law, that whatever can happen, it will happen. So these are all the possible world lines. I mean, everything that could happen for Cooper, it did happen in some of the parallel universes. So now, because they are the beings of fifth dimension, and because they have placed this tesseract so close to singularity of Gargantua, they have access to infinite space and time. So they have access to all the possible world lines of Cooper. So what do they do here? They drag Cooper A into Cooper F's world line, the one which they created through that crash. So now they would be using that world line. So they drag him into Cooper F's world line, and he finds himself inside the Tesseract once he is dragged into Cooper F's world line. So here, the Cooper that we see is Cooper A, and he has left his daughter behind for this mission. Now let's refer to that Murph as Murph A. So at this point, he thinks that this mission is a failure, and he feels like he made that sacrifice of leaving his kids behind for nothing. So, and because right now he has been dragged into Cooper F's world line by day, uh, the Murph that he sees here is Murph F, a daughter of Cooper F in that parallel universe. And this is something Cooper figures out because he knows that Murph never lived in this house, Murph A that is. So he sees that uh, Cooper F2 is getting ready to leave her daughter behind, and because he thinks that this mission was a failure, and he feels like he Cooper F is gonna fail too, so in desperation he sends the stay message um, to make them stay together. Now here inside the Tesseract, Cooper A knows that the person that he is seeing from the Tesseract is not himself of the past. That is Cooper F, another version of him from a parallel universe. Now remember, I asked you that question that whenever we see the videos or photographs of ourselves from the past, we always refer to ourselves as a first person, but that is not something Cooper did. Now here's your answer. He kept on referring to himself as a third person because he knows that the Cooper that he is seeing is not him. That is another version of him from a parallel universe. And that is why he kept on referring to him as a third person while he was urging Murph F to make him stay. Now, all these statements that Cooper A made here were addressed to Murph F, urging her to make Cooper F stay behind with her. But later, when Cooper A sees that despite all his efforts, Cooper F gets up and gets ready to leave Murph, suddenly he relates that moment to himself. Cooper A starts to relate to that moment because, in the same manner, he too left Murph A behind. Now he's thinking of Murph A inside his head, and he makes a wish that maybe Murph A should have never let him leave for this mission. And that is why in the next statement he says, "Don't let me leave, Murph." So here he is not addressing to Murph F, he is addressing to Murph A inside his head, and that is why he uses the first person reference for himself here. And Christopher Nolan used both the references, the first person and the third person reference in this scene, just to create that ambiguity amongst the viewers. So, moving forward, um, in the next scene, we hear the voice of Tars. Now, you need to remember that this is Tars A. This is not the Tars we saw in the movie earlier, who came along with Cooper F, because at this time when Cooper A is inside the Tesseract, Cooper F has not even jumped inside Gargantua. Okay, this scene is from decades ago. So this is the voice of Tars A, who came along with Cooper A on this mission. Now, he is trying to explain to Cooper A what exactly is happening. He says that you have seen that time is represented here as a physical dimension. And then he says that you have worked out that you can exert a force across space-time. And then Cooper says, yes, gravity, it can cross dimensions, including time. Now, I asked this question earlier that shouldn't Cooper know this already, because we saw in the beginning of the movie when he told Murph that it wasn't a ghost, it was gravity. So now you know the answer. These are two different versions of Cooper. I mean, Cooper A, inside the Tesseract, discovers that gravity can cross dimensions while sending the message using gravity. On the other hand, the one we saw in the beginning of the movie, Cooper F, he discovered the same thing while receiving a message which he knew had come from a higher dimension. So that answers the question. Now, Tars says to Cooper that they didn't bring us here to change the past. And Cooper says, say that again. Now, if you remember, I put forward this question that what did Tars mean by that? So let me explain. So this is Cooper A's world line that we know. So he was working with the NASA, which was now a secret organization. He went through the wormhole, and here he went inside the Tesseract. And we also know that after the point of crash, there was another world line of Cooper F created, which at this point was heading towards extinction. Now, inside the Tesseract, Cooper realizes that they didn't choose him. They chose Murph to save the world. Now, I also put forward this question earlier that once he figured that out, that Murph was the one who had to save the world, why did he not simply give out the quantum data through that watch? Why did he have to give the NASA's coordinates? Now, you know the answer, because at this point, Murph has not even made it to NASA. So now he knows that he needs to get Murph to NASA somehow so that she can solve the equation of gravity. And that is why once he figures out that Murph is the chosen one, he asks TARS to give him the coordinates to NASA in binary so that he can give it to Murph and Cooper of the past. And as Murphy's laws suggest that everything that can happen will happen, he knew that once those coordinates will go to Murph, in some parallel universe, she will end up with NASA. So now, what does Cooper A do? So, when Cooper A, he jumped inside the Tesseract, uh, I told you that they dragged him into Cooper F's world line. Now, why was it done that way? I mean, why did they not drag him into his own world line of Cooper A's world line? Now, let me explain here. If he was dragged in his own world line, in that case, he would have had to give those NASA's coordinates at this point to Cooper A of the past. Now, that would never have worked. The reason being that Cooper A of the past, he works for NASA, and upon receiving those coordinates, he would have known that these are the coordinates to NASA that he works for, which is a secret organization. Now, that being a top secret, he would have never shared that piece of information with Murph. And that is why the plan of the future human beings would not have worked. So that is why they dragged him into Cooper F's world line when he jumped inside the Tesseract so that he would give out the NASA's coordinates at this point to Cooper F. Now Cooper F left NASA before it went down. So Cooper F had no clue about NASA being still operational, and he had no clue where those coordinates led to. So he ended up sharing that piece of information with Murph. Now that event changed everything because that created a new world line in which Cooper F and Murph were not heading towards extinction anymore, and they ended up reaching NASA. Now that was the plan of the future human beings all along, to get Murph to NASA because they knew that she was the one who's going to solve the equation of gravity and save humanity. So this also explains the fifth gravitational anomaly, um, wherein they inflicted that crash on Cooper's spacecraft by tripping its fly-by-wire. So um, what they wanted was to create this world line for Cooper, the one that I'm pointing at with the laser here. So they wanted to create this world line in which Cooper would have no idea about NASA being still operational, so that once uh, he's given the NASA's coordinates using gravity, he would end up sharing that information with Murph and he would get her to NASA. So that is why uh, that crash was so important. So now, coming to the question, what did TARS mean when he said that they didn't bring us here to change the past. So when Cooper A jumped inside the Tesseract, he was dragged into Cooper F's world line. So let me show you what is the past that he could see from there. Okay, let us just back up a little here. So this is the past that he could view from the Tesseract of Cooper F. Now, because until this point he has not given out the NASA's coordinates, so Cooper F and Murph F are still heading towards extinction, and that's what he's seeing from inside the Tesseract. Now, TARS is trying to tell Cooper that he cannot change that. Whatever has happened cannot be changed, but what he can do is that he can create an event in the past, like giving out the NASA's coordinates to them, uh, which would create a new past by taking them to NASA and giving humanity a chance. So what has happened here is that the original past that he saw from inside the Tesseract, he did not change that. Okay, they are still heading towards extinction in that parallel universe, but this event here created a new past, a new parallel universe in which Murph and Cooper reached NASA, and hence humanity was given a chance to survive. So that's what TARS meant by saying that they did not bring us here to change the past. Now we see that before leaving, Cooper F gave Murph a watch, and right after he leaves, she places that watch on the shelf. Now they, the future human beings, they made sure that Cooper A inside the Tesseract is made aware of the importance of that watch. So they make sure that they see from within the Tesseract that Murph initially threw the watch away, but later when Cooper F left her, she placed the watch on the shelf. So Cooper A knew that this watch holds some importance for Murph, and someday she's gonna come back to pick it up. And that is why he tells Taurus to translate the data into Morse code and give it to him so that he could code the data into the movement of the second hand. So here he gives the quantum data into that watch, and later we see a 40-year-old Murph come to retrieve that watch. Now here we see that once Murph comes back to her room, she picks up her old notebook and she sees that stay message that she decoded. So it must have been like a repressed memory for her, something that she might have forgotten that happened. So when she picks the book, she looks at that message, and then suddenly she figures it out that it wasn't a ghost, it was her father. Now, earlier I said that I'll explain that how was she able to figure that out. So let me explain that now. So whoever this person is who is sending all these messages, he or she needs to fulfill two conditions. First one being that this person needs to be really concerned about the Cooper family. This person needs to have some sort of an emotional attachment of some level with the Cooper family, because clearly this person is doing whatever he or she can to stop them from being apart. This person wants them to stay together and does not want Murph and her brother to be without their father. That is the reason why this person sent the stay message. Secondly, Murph now is a scientist, and she's old enough to understand the concepts of higher dimensions, parallel universes and the theory of relativity. So she knows that for someone to be able to use gravity to send such messages across dimensions, that person needs to be somewhere in the outer space inside a black hole close to its singularity. Now, that would be the second condition that this person needs to fulfill. Now, the only person who could possibly fulfill these two conditions of having an emotional attachment with her family and being in the outer space has to be her father, because she knows that he was an astronaut with NASA, and as per the Murphy's law, he is still an astronaut in some parallel universe. And now she figures out that in that universe, in that parallel universe, her father must have gone on some mission in space in which he ended up inside a black hole, and from there he is trying to communicate to her by sending all those messages in order to save her and help her save humanity in this universe. So that's how she figures out that it was not a ghost, it was her father sending all those messages from a higher dimension. Now, moving on. So, here we saw that Cooper A gave the quantum data into that watch, and then we saw 40-year-old Murph come in to retrieve that watch, which figured out that the ghost was her father, and then she uses that data to solve the equation of gravity, and she takes the people from Earth to the Cooper station near Saturn. So here we established that Cooper F dies, and then we see Brand going to Edmund's planet. So this is actually Brand F who went to Edmund's planet here. Okay, and then we saw that Cooper A, who was dragged into Cooper F's world line inside the Tesseract, is now um, brought through the wormhole into this universe when the Tesseract is closed by day. Now, remember that they have access to infinite space and time. So they could have chosen any moment in the past for Cooper A's travel through the wormhole. Now, just to make things a little more dramatic, Christopher Nolan made Cooper A travel back through the wormhole exactly at the time when Endurance, carrying Cooper F, was going through the wormhole in the opposite direction that we saw in the movie. Now, just like from inside the Tesseract, Cooper A could see Murph's bedroom. In the same manner, while going through the wormhole, he could see the inside of Endurance carrying Cooper F. Here you see. So again, Cooper A used gravity to create an impression of a handshake with Brand that Brand felt. So now if you remember, I asked this question earlier, that what was that handshake all about? So here's the answer. Cooper A was traveling through the wormhole, and at the same time Endurance, carrying Cooper F, was traveling through the wormhole in the opposite direction. So Cooper A used gravity to create an impression of shaking hands with Brand F, with Cooper F sitting beside her. Maybe he wanted to wish them luck or just wanted to congratulate them. And then when Cooper A travels back through the wormhole, he, along with Tars A, is left near Saturn, from where he is retrieved and taken to Cooper Station. So here I will answer another question that I asked earlier, that why did not Cooper show any kind of emotion when he was taken back to his old recreated house at the Cooper station? So now you know the answer. Now, because this is Cooper A, this is not Cooper F. This is Cooper A who has come from a parallel universe where he was an astronaut and lived in a fancy house maybe, and he never lived on a farm. So he actually never lived in this house, and he is looking at this house for the first time. So he cannot really relate to it, and hence there was no emotion shown. Here, the only thing that he can relate to is Tars A, who came along with him from Cooper A's parallel universe. Uh, that is why Tars A is the only thing that actually catches his attention. Apart from that, he is not really interested in that house. Now, here I will answer another question that I asked in the beginning. It's actually the last question that is left. So, at Cooper Station, Cooper is talking to Tars and he says, I don't care much for this, pretending we are back where we started. So I asked the question, what is this pretense that Cooper is talking about? So I know it could have a lot of meanings here, but what actually Cooper A is telling Tars is that he has to pretend in front of people at Cooper Station that he is Cooper Ref and he has come back from that mission. But the truth is that Cooper F has died, and this is Cooper A who has come back from a parallel universe. So he does not want to freak people out by telling them all this, and he believes that people might not believe him. So he's just going along with this, he's just playing along, and he's pretending to be Cooper F, and that's what he's talking about. So that, for me, is the plot of this movie, Interstellar, and here I've answered all the questions that I put forward earlier. Apart from this, there are a lot of clues in the movie. For example, Cooper's reunion with Murph at Cooper Station with the older Murph. So, first one there was his reaction after seeing Murph. So, if you remember, when Cooper returned from the Miller's planet, where they lost like 23 years, when he came back, he realized that Murph was as old as he was when he left Earth. So, on seeing Murph then, this was his reaction. So, I mean, you would expect a similar kind of a reaction from him when he sees Murph at Cooper Station, but again, that doesn't happen. Look at him. So, he's just wondering, okay, whether Murph knows that I am not the same Cooper who left her at that time, or if she does not know, do I tell her or do I not tell her? So this is what is going through his head. Now here's another clue, a third person reference by Murph. So we have already established that Murph knows that the ghost was her father, and she also knows that at the time when the ghost was sending those messages, Cooper F was beside her helping her decode those messages. So she now knows that there are actually two versions of Cooper involved in this whole process. Cooper A, the ghost, and Cooper F, the one who was helping her decode those messages which were being sent by the ghost. So when at Cooper Station, Cooper A comes to visit Murph in the hospital and tells her that Murph, I was your ghost. Murph immediately realizes that this is a version of Cooper who had been sending all those messages and not the Cooper that she used to live with on that farm. So when Cooper A asks Murph in the hospital that how did she know that he was going to come back, then instead of saying that because you promised me, Murph says because my dad promised me. So even though her dad is sitting right in front of her, she refers to him as a third person because here she is actually referring to Cooper F, who she knows is not present there, and that the Cooper who is present there is actually Cooper A, and he's not the one who made that promise to her. So, next clue, no protest by Cooper. So, when Murph tells Cooper that no parent should have to watch their own child die, you go. So, at that point, you would expect Cooper to protest against it, okay, to make some case for himself to stay with her, but that does not happen. I mean, he straight away gets up and he leaves the same night for the Edmonds planet. So you would expect Cooper F to do that, to stay behind with Murph no matter what. But this is Cooper A. So mind you, that does not mean that Cooper A does not love Murph. I mean, he loves Murph as much as Cooper F does. But this is Cooper A. He has come in here from a parallel universe, and for him to be able to relate this version of Murph from another alternate universe is gonna take some time. And Murph obviously does not have that much time. So in this universe, um, the thing that he can relate most to is actually the mission itself to save humanity. So he chooses to leave the same day. So another clue is Cooper's unawareness of a brand's whereabouts. So when Cooper F jumped into Gargantua that we saw in the movie, at that point he knew that Brand was heading towards Edmund's planet. But here, when Murph asks Cooper to leave, he says, "Where? Where does he go from here?" And then she tells her Brand to go to Brand, and then he realizes that actually Brand is at Edmund's planet. That's when he comes to know about it. So Cooper Rev would have known that already, but because this is Cooper A, he has no idea about whereabouts of Brand. So the last clue here is the name Lazarus Mission. So as I've already told you that it was Cooper who completed the Lazarus mission. I mean, he died as Cooper F, and he came back from the dead from a parallel universe as Cooper A. So when he left his house for the mission and died, and then when he came back to the same house, that moment actually marked the completion of the Lazarus mission. So here, when he is going back to his recreated house at the Cooper station, so he has completed the whole cycle of the Lazarus mission. I mean, he went from this house into space, died, and came back from a parallel universe, back from the dead. And now, when he is about to enter the house again, um, here, Lazarus mission is shown written on the screen there because this moment marks the completion of the Lazarus mission. So, if I had to sum up the plot of this movie, I'd say that humanity became extinct due to blight, and the only survivors were a handful of people who worked with NASA, who were scientists and engineers in NASA, um, who worked underground, and they carried on with their research, with all their work, and maybe after 60, 70, 80, or maybe 100 years, they were able to access the higher dimensions, the fourth and the fifth dimension. And then maybe they decided that they'll go back in time and give the human beings of the past another chance to make it, to survive. So, for that, they might have shortlisted, they might have picked a handful of people who were smart enough, like Murph, um, who could solve the equation of gravity. But the problem that they had was that um, whenever they would send data through gravitational anomaly, it would not make any sense to them, to the people of the past, because it needed to come from someone with whom they share a strong bond of love. Now, they found one such person, Murphy Cooper, who had a father, Joseph Cooper, who was an astronaut with NASA, and who could be sent into the black hole for that purpose. So actually, they did not pick just Murph, they chose a team of Murph and Joseph Cooper for this mission. So they placed a wormhole near Saturn so that Cooper A and people of his time in NASA could observe that and could try and figure out a way to use it to save humanity. So Cooper A ends up in Gargantua, and I've already explained that they could not have made Cooper A give the quantum data or the NASA coordinates back to himself of the past, back to Cooper A, because Cooper A knew about NASA, and on receiving coordinates he would have figured out that this is a top secret, and he would never have shared that data, that information with Murph. So to solve that, they created another gravitational anomaly to trip Cooper A's fly-by-wire of his spacecraft to create that crash. Now, after that crash, Cooper left NASA, and another parallel world line of Cooper was created in which he was a farmer and knew nothing about NASA. About NASA being still operational. So Cooper A sent the NASA's coordinate to Cooper F of the past, and that's when they both realized that gravity could be used to send or receive data. So Cooper F sees the NASA's coordinates. He does not know what those coordinates led to, and he accidentally takes Murph along with him to NASA, and that's what they wanted. So, and then Murph ends up saving humanity using the quantum data that she receives in her watch. So in this movie, Cooper A is the one who actually completes the Lazarus mission. He dies as Cooper F and comes back from the dead from another world line of Cooper A. And if you watch closely, the past did not change. The movie does not alter the past. The humanity became extinct. They didn't change that. So just as stars explained to Cooper, the past was not changed. Only a new past was created in which humanity survives and reaches Cooper Station and eventually maybe to Edmund's planet. So that's my explanation of this movie. If you think you can, there's something that you could correct or something that you could add to this explanation, please comment on this video. Thanks for watching.